All right, everyone, good morning and welcome back. Today is day 15 of the 30-day profit challenge. It's the halfway point. We're almost halfway. So thanks for being here. I'm excited about today. Today I'm getting into some conversion margin and conversion funnel stuff, which is kind of the fun stuff that I like to talk a lot about. I could talk ad nauseum about this, but hopefully today won't be too much of an nauseum for you. But in any case, really want to thank you for being here today. Again, we're 15 days into this challenge, and hopefully there's been some good insights for you. I know I've been hearing some good feedback from people. They're really finding some use out of these sessions, so thank you for the feedback. Again, I want to make these lessons as impactful as as much information as I can pack into them in the sort of the 10-15 minutes we've got every morning. So thank you for the feedback. Continue to do my best to offer you whatever I can out of my brain into yours. So thanks again for being here today. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to get into the conversion funnel. So let's dive into it. All right. So conversion funnel. This is probably one of the most favorite things I like to talk about when I'm talking about e-commerce or digital marketing. But today what we're going to talk about is a conversion funnel. And to imagine a funnel, where we're at in terms of the whole process is we've been going through, I like to use a lot of metaphors. So just to recap quickly, we've been going through this profit litmus test. And with the conversion funnel, we're kind of sitting in step 3. So, what we've been talking about, we talked about, first of all, the product margin, which we went over in the first week. And that was, again, relating everything related to price, related to your product, related to the things that you actually physically sell or digitally or virtually sell in terms of what you output to your customers. Then we looked at the order margin tree, and we wrapped that up yesterday. And that sort of series of lessons, what we talked about there was understanding everything that has to do with all of the order variable costs. So things like your platform, things like maybe your returns or your incentives or your payment processing fees, all the things that are tied to actually putting the order out there for your customer, fulfilling on it. So this week we're going to get into conversion margin, and I kind of switch things up a little bit. Is the conversion margin, I think, is a little bit more relevant to understand before we get into the customer margin, which is really where we're going to end the challenge on, is talking a bit more about your customers. So today we're starting off talking about conversion margin. And so with conversion margin, what we're talking about there is, if you can imagine, there's this big pool of people out there in the world that have an opportunity to buy what you're offering. And what we're trying to do is understand, well, how do we take all those people and we work them through a bit of what we call a funnel. So we bring them to your website, and then once they're on your website, there's a series of pages and a bit of a formula here that you can understand how to get people from visiting your website all the way through to buying a product from you. And so without further ado, let me introduce you to the conversion funnel. Now, this is a pretty standard conversion funnel that's used in e-commerce. And typically what it starts with is, as I alluded to, all the visitors that visit your website. So they visit any particular page on your website, we would count those as what we call a visitor. Now, obviously, visitors aren't actual customers. So what we need to do is encourage those people to look at some of the products or look at some of the services that we have on the site. And so to do that, we would present with them category pages, and we would turn those people from visitors into browsers. And so the category pages, think about those that could also be looked at as search result pages. Think about these pages as anything that has to do with showcasing a bunch of products on your website. The way I like to think about it is, if you go into a department store, you went to the women's section or the men's section or the shoe section, that would be considered what we would call a category of product. And so what we're trying to talk about is that department or that particular area of your store where you can showcase a bunch of different products or a bunch of different services that are going to take those visitors into browsers. They're actually now seeing some product on your website. Obviously, that's still not enough, because we want to make those browsers turn into shoppers. We want them to start looking at and touching and feeling products. So with those, what we would do is we want to convert those people into shoppers. And what shoppers would be is anyone that's actually visiting what we call a product detail page. So again, using that same metaphor of in a storefront, those are people that are actually going up and physically touching a product, maybe picking it up off the rack or taking it off the shelf and looking at it and maybe understanding the details around it, or maybe looking at the tag to see the price, or maybe the care instructions if it's a piece of clothing, or maybe they're just they're pulling up their phone and they're looking at the other details around, well, what does the other people have to say about this product? those would be what we would call shoppers. And these are now when you've got people that are committed to actually, they've touched a product, they're a bit more committed now than the browsers and or the visitors. So let's delve in a little bit further. Next, we've got what you would call your buyers. And these are people that are actually physically taking something and they're putting it in their cart. So they're basically at the store, they've got a shopping bag with them, maybe they've got a cart, maybe they've got a basket. They're physically taking something off the shelf, putting it into their cart. And so in the virtual world, or in the virtual sense, we call those people add to cart or cart visitors. Some people will shortcut right straight from adding the cart right into the checkout process, which is the next step here. But what we want to do is make sure we capture that unique step, because it's very important to understand who those buyers are. Because a lot of times in a traditional sense, you could go into a shopping store and put something into your cart, but then you may decide, you know, I don't want that. And you maybe put it back onto the shelf. Or maybe you decide, you know what, I'm just going to leave this over here as I check out. So those people though, you know, you want to be able to, those are the people that are like, well, what are you thinking? You just bought something. You're ready to buy something. And obviously there's an opportunity here we'll talk a bit about in the customer side where we can actually go out and reach out to those people and try to win them back. So the next step in would be your spenders. These are people, okay, they're buying, they're ready to go. They're now in the checkout lineup and they're ready to purchase and they're ready to put down their credit card or put down whatever payment method that you are offering for them, and they're ready to buy something from you. Those are what we call our spenders. And those are typically people that reach the checkout pages of your website and they're ready to buy. And so obviously, all of those steps leading towards becoming a customer. And customers would be people who finally reach that order confirmation page where you're able to hand them that receipt and say, hey, thank you for being a customer. Welcome to XYZ store. So that in a nutshell would be your conversion funnel. You know, you start at the top, and what we're going to go over in the next few days is we're going to figure out and talk about, well, how do you make and understand where people are at in your particular funnel? As well as you can see this funnel here I've driven for you is pretty narrow, where we got some pretty short steps in between. Obviously a funnel though can be a lot wider. It can also be a lot narrower. And obviously wherever your funnel's at today, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, you can always make your funnel from as wide as possible to cast the net as many people as possible. But over time, you want to figure out how do you make that funnel as narrow as possible, or what you can do is from the bottom, widen that funnel as well, so that the funnel can basically, we want to get as much flow through and as much throughput of your overall business. And that's what we would call your conversion rate. So tomorrow, we're going to dive into conversion rates, and we're going to look and calculate, how do you calculate your conversion rate for your website? And so what we'll look at is we'll look at some of those individual steps of the site. We're going to look at some of those pages as well over the next couple of days, and look at some opportunities for how you can potentially improve your conversion rates. So without further ado, that's all for today. Again, I thank you for being here and ask you again to be present. Go out and connect with others and try to make an impact in someone's life today. So with that, I'm going to pause the screen share and stop the recording for today, and I will take any questions.